much as they weigh. I got a whole room full of them.
You got a book. How you doing, man? Alhamdulillah. A book is something I can stand this up against. Well, that one is okay. I'm gonna put this one over here. Yep, that's perfect.
Go live when you think. Let them know we're going to the Isha at the close of the program.
Okay. Okay. We're live. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. We will pray Salatul Isha, inshallah, once we're done. It's already 8:05, inshallah. We're going to go until 9 o'clock, and then we'll stop, bi'idhnillah. I'm going to do my lecture a little different tonight. A brother reminded me of something after Jumu'ah. He said, sometimes khatibs or imams, when they give khutbahs or lectures, they push out a lot of information during a short amount of time. And sometimes it's very difficult for people, to grab all of the principles and the little nuggets, the jewels of advice. So if sometimes when giving a lecture or khutbah, you can break it down into points, it makes it easier for people to follow. It makes it easier for people to follow. So starting tonight, inshallah ta'ala, and hopefully here on after, it's an additional pressure on the speaker, because sometimes I'm just going. I'm just like a moving train. You got to just jump on wherever you can. But I'm going to try to, when I come across, points, alhamdulillah, if you got a phone, you can take some notes. If you have pen and paper, you can take some notes, inshallah. We'll take it point by point. And this, inshallah ta'ala, will also help in terms of us moving towards a more critical thinking type of ummah. Our direction now is to be more critical and analyzing the information that people are giving us when they sit in front of us and talk, and analyzing it based upon, obviously, the Quran and the Sunnah, and us as well as our intellect, our common sense. Because oftentimes we'll just use the Quran and the Sunnah with absolutely no common sense. And Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala said that the Sahaba, they used to practice Islam using a combination of al-aql wa naql, revelation, al-naql, Quran and Sunnah, as well as al-aql, using their common sense. And it's like today we'll take Quran and the Sunnah, and no matter how absurd the interpretation is, we'll accept it because it's Quran and Sunnah, right? And intellect goes completely out of the window, and we can no longer afford to function like that. We can't afford to function like that anymore. Things, times are a lot different, and so that means that we have to start critically analyzing the information that people are feeding us. We oftentimes say we follow the Quran and Sunnah, but in the past, we've watched or seen people give lectures, entire lectures, 35, 45 minutes, an hour long, and quote maybe one or two hadith in the entire lecture. And then we'll say out the other side of our necks that we follow the Quran and the Sunnah. We can't do that, man. We can't do that. All right, so tonight's discussion, we're talking about standing in your truth. Standing in your truth. And we're talking about the Prophet ﷺ, Prophet Muhammad's life, his early life in Mecca. And just to give you kind of a glimpse of what life in Mecca looked like for him, by himself, and his ability to stand firm. All right, because as we transition from this, this state of sleep, this state of unconsciousness to we're transitioning now into a state of consciousness and a state of awareness of issues that have been very dormant in the Islamic community. As we transition, we have to understand that things are going to get uncomfortable. Conversations are going to get uncomfortable. And we have to learn how to stand in our truth and not backpedal and not flip-flop because, this seems to be a stronger argument than this. We have to learn how to stand in our truth. All right, this is a very, very critical time right now. This is not the time to flip-flop and be, unsure about what direction you're going in. All right? Our communities have been asleep for many decades, and now moving from a state of being, resembling sleep to now a one of wakefulness, it's going to get uncomfortable because you're going to come across things and people and, that's going to make you uncomfortable, and you have to learn how to stand in your truth, even if the entire world goes against you. The Prophet ﷺ told Abdullah ibn Abbas, dropped his jewel on him, and he was only 9-10 years old. Ibn Abbas said, Kuntu ghulaman khalf al-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam ala himar, that I was a young boy on the back of the donkey, sitting on the back of the donkey with the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and he said to me, Ya ghulam, oh young boy. He said, Inni u'alimuka kalimat, I'm going to give you some jewels of advice. He was dropping jewels on this young boy that he would be able to take with him for the rest of his life. He said, Ihfadillah yahfaduk, preserve the limits that have been set by Allah, and Allah will preserve you. Ihfadillah tajiduhu tujahak, preserve the limits that have been set by Allah, and you will always find God in front of you. He said, Idha sa'alta fas'alillah, if you ask God first. إِذَا اسْتَعَنْتَ فَاسْتَعِنْ بِاللَّهِ, when you seek assistance, seek God's help first. He said, وَعْلَمْ, and know, لَوْ أَنَّ الْأُمَّةِ, if the entire world gathered together to harm you with anything, they would only be able to harm you with something that God had already planned for you. When you put that jewel in the mind of a kid, that's like telling a kid at 9-10 years old, if the whole world stands up to go against you, they would only be able to harm you with something that Allah has already decreed to come to you. So there would be no escaping it. And if they gather together to benefit you with anything, they would only be able to benefit you with what Allah has already decreed for you to be benefited from. What does that mean? That what is in essence, as I teach my hadith students, my students in the class, enroll the institute, we learn that we summarize the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. What is the Prophet? And we have to sum up what he is saying to Abdullah ibn Abbas here. What is he saying? That if the whole world, the whole nation gathered together to benefit you with anything, they would only benefit you with what Allah has already decreed for you to have benefit in. And if they gathered together to harm you with anything, they would only harm you in that which Allah has already decreed for you to be harmed in. If we have to summarize that and put it in our own words, what is the Prophet ﷺ essentially telling him? He's telling him that there's power in standing on your own too. There's power in that. Because the moment you realize that nobody can help you except what Allah has already decreed you to be helped in, and nobody can harm you except already decreed for you to be harmed in, when you accept this notion, you don't cow down in the face of adversity, trial and tribulation. And this is what happens with many of us. When we're faced with certain situations, we buckle under pressure. We buckle under pressure. And that's not the quality of a leader. We're trying to raise leaders in our communities. Future leaders. And understanding Abdullah ibn Abbas, anhuma, he became the most knowledgeable of the Sahaba. Make no mistake about that. He took those jewels of advice and he applied them to his life. And it's like we're doing the opposite. We're reading the hadith and the ayah and it goes in one ear, out the other. There's no digesting it. There's no implementing it. So the human capacity for challenge and difficulty is far greater than we can usually imagine, right? We usually think that I can't do this, but that is because we don't know our own strength. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala God doesn't test us with more than we can handle. So when Allah tests us with something, usually when we see the test, we say, there's no way, I don't know how I'm going to make it through this. But Allah knew that you could make it through it. Otherwise, He wouldn't have tested you with it. You follow me? That Allah does not put on you more than you can handle. But when we're tested with things, whether in our marriages, in our personal lives, with whatever, we oftentimes see the test from the very beginning as something that is beyond our capacity. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would not have tested you with it if He knew that it was beyond your capacity. That means that Allah knows us better than we know ourselves. Allah knows us better than we know ourselves. We only know our true capacity after the test subsides, after it's over with. Then we say, wow, I made it through. Now you realize, what your capacity is. But before then, you didn't know. You don't know yourself. Allah knows you better than you know yourself. All right? So our capacity for difficulty is like a person, and I hate to use jail references, but that's part of my journey. It's like a person get 10 years in prison, 15 years in prison. At the time the judge bangs his gavel and says, that's what it is, you're sitting there like, I'm going to die. There's no way in the world I'm going to make it through this. After a year or two, guess what? You built for it. After a year or two, you built for it. You do it standing on your head. It becomes daily routine because we adapt to our environments. But at the beginning of the situation, we say to ourselves, there's no way that I can make it through this. All right, so why am I saying this? Because as we evolve as human beings, and we will evolve, if you are the same person 10 years from now, you have not grown, then that means that you have not evolved. That means that you are going against your natural state. Our natural nature is to evolve, is to become smarter, is to become better. You see a guy who comes home from doing 20 years in prison and he comes back on the block and say, I'm still the same dude. Nothing about me changed. Well, then you idiot. You know what I mean? Like you, in 20 years, nothing about you changed, genius. You were supposed to change, whether it was because you were incarcerated or because you grew out of, you morphed into something better. But to come back and say, nothing about me changed, I'm still the same person, right? That's not progress. That's not progress. So then when you look at our communities and you see that there has been no progress, 10 years have gone by, 15 years, 20 years have gone by. It's the same masjid, the same carpet, the same air conditioner, the same clock. Nothing about the community, the same people, I'm from New Jersey, North Jersey, so I go back and I see some of the communities, and wallah al-azim, I pass by a particular masjid, and you see the same people standing out in front of the masjid congregating that was in front of the masjid 20 years ago. And I'm just like, I'm not going in there to pray. I'm not going in there to pray. Because we should be beyond that. The same people should not be standing in front of the masjid selling kufis and, right, you should have a store by now. You still in front of the masjid selling kufis and oil? You still have not figured it out that you can go rent a storefront for $500 a month, fix it up, renovate it, and turn it into your very own shop that you can possibly pass down to your children? We still have not figured that out? No, I'm not. Because we should be beyond that. We should have evolved beyond that. So as we evolve as human beings, it is important to understand that our perseverance, our patience, perseverance is cultivated in the soil of our commitment, determination, and resilience. Point. So every time I say point, then that means that is something that as you go back and you listen to it again, you can concentrate on the points now. You can identify the points a little more easier. That our perseverance is cultivated in the soil of our commitment, determination, and resilience. Our ability to bounce back, our ability to be steadfast and be committed and dedicated. Our perseverance is going to be cultivated through that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, لَتَرَكَبُنَّ طَبَقًا عَنْ طَبَقٍ. You are going to evolve from one stage to the next. One stage to the next. And resilience is accepting your new reality, even if it is more challenging or daunting than the one that you had before. Point. Resilience is being able to accept your new reality. When you find yourself in a new place, whether in your personal life, in your marriage, wherever you are, resilience is being able to accept your new reality, even if it is more challenging than the one that you had before. The ability to stand in your truth unapologetically is the goal of our tests individually and communally. As you are tested as an individual and as we are going to be tested as a community, the goal of those tests is for us to be able to stand in our truth unapologetically. Point. Being able to stand in your truth unapologetically. As there's a sweetness of freedom that is attached to individuality that comes with the price of isolation that most people are not willing to go through. Point. There's a sweetness attached to the freedom of individuality, the ability to be your own person. There's a sweetness of freedom that is attached to that. But that comes with the price of isolation that most people are not willing to stand on. Most people are not willing to stand alone by themselves and deal with, their reality head on, standing in their truth. A lot of people are not willing to do that. Most people would rather acquiesce to the status quo, and say, you know what, I don't think I can handle that. Acquiesce to the status quo. I don't think I can handle, I remember the first time that, a scholar said something about me. I thought my world was going to come crashing down. I was afraid that this scholar was going to warn against me, that scholar was going to say this against me. And, I got to a point where I had to just, accept that was going to be the reality if I was going to be my own person. Right? I got in contact with a very close sheikh. Most of the people in the community know Sheikh Khalid Radadi. And I had wrote something against a particular website that I used to translate with, Medina.com. And it was against my better judgment. And the sheikh, he said to me, Shadid, how could you write something against Medina.com? And my statement to him was that, I was afraid that this particular sheikh was going to warn against me. And he said to me some very powerful words. He said, so what? Let him warn against you. So what? What you know is the truth out of your fear that somebody is going to say something about you. And Wallah al-Azim, it was like a light bulb went off in my head. And I knew at that moment that there was no going back. Once your eyes is open to something, you can't ignore it. There was no going back after that. And the fact that it was a respected sheikh amongst us who said that to me made it was even more valid. It gave it even more credence. He was like, so what? Let him warn against you. But you can't let your fear of being warned against, cause you to go against what you know is wrong. Can't do that. And you have many people who did this. You have people who came to you and said, what's your position on Shadid Muhammad? What's your position on Tahir White? What's your position on this one? And people buckled under that. Oh, I don't rock out with them like that. I don't take from them like that, knowing damn well you do. But you couldn't stand up and say, yes, that's what it is. Many people couldn't do that because we weren't ready to stand in our space, stand on our truth regardless. And that goes against the advice that the Prophet ﷺ gave to Abdullah bin Abbas. So being able to stand in your truth unapologetically is the goal of our tests. And we're going to see with the Prophet ﷺ that he had to do that. Once he received the revelation that made him a messenger, there was no going back to being Muhammad ibn Abdullah. He was Muhammad Rasulullah. Point. Once he became Muhammad Rasulullah, there was no going back to being Muhammad ibn Abdullah. So totally, different journey now. All right, so if we look at the life of the Prophet ﷺ in the early stages of his mission as a messenger, we can find many exemplary qualities that contributed to his success, but one in particular suited him well as he toiled through the tumultuous times in Mecca before the migration, and the Quran referred to this time as the difficult hour. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, in Surah number 9, Surah At-Tawbah, Ayat 117, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, لَقَدْ تَابَ اللَّهُ عَلَى النَّبِيِّ وَالْمُهَاجِرِينَ وَالْأَنصَارَ الَّذِينَ تَبَعُوهُ فِي سَاعَةِ الْعُسْرَةِ مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا كَادَ يَزِيغُ قُلُوبَ فَرِيقٍ مِّنْهُمْ ثُمَّ تَابَ عَلَيْهِمْ إِنَّهُ بِهِمْ رَءُوفٌ رَحِيمٌ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, then indeed Allah has already forgiven the Prophet and the Muhajirin and those who migrated and the Ansar, those citizens of Medina, الَّذِينَ تَبْعُوهُ فِي سَاعَةِ الْأُسْرَةِ, those who followed him in the difficult hour. Mecca was a very, very difficult time. And we're in a difficult hour right now if you're not paying attention to what's going on around you. We're in a difficult time right now. And this time that we are living in, obviously, it only gets worse. The Prophet ﷺ said, لا يأتي عليكم زمان إلا والذي بعده شر منه, that there does not come upon you a time except the time that comes after it is worse than it. That's just the nature of the beast that we're in. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that Allah has already forgiven the Prophet and the Muhajirun and the Ansar, those who followed him في ساعة العسرة, in the difficult hour, the difficult time. من بعد ما كاد يزيغ قلوب فريق منهم, after the hearts of a group from amongst them almost got weak and inclined towards the other way. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and then Allah turned towards the believers with forgiveness. Indeed, He is Ra'ufun Rahim, He is compassionate and merciful. The Prophet ﷺ, he emerged with a message and a mission. Point. The Prophet ﷺ emerged with a message and a mission. We have the same thing. We have a message, La ilaha illallah, and we have a mission to live by that and to call others to that and to make sure we die on that. We have a message and a mission. Our entire lives revolve around this concept, La ilaha illallah. To live on that, to call to that, and to make sure that we die on that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, قُلْ إِنَّ الصَّلَاةِ وَالنُّسُكِ وَمَحْيَايَ وَمَمَاتِ لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ لَا شَرِيكَ لَهُ. That say, O Muhammad, that indeed my salah, my prayer, وَالنُّسُكِ, and my sacrifice, وَمَحْيَايَ, and my life, وَمَمَاتِ, and my death, are all for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Rabbul Alameen, the Lord of everything that exists. Your entire lives revolve around this one concept, La ilaha illallah. La sharika la, no partner along with Allah in that. So the Prophet ﷺ, he emerged with a message and a mission that would have been considered by most standards completely impossible. Why? Because pre-Islamic Arab society was steeped in idolatry and had become intertwined with their culture in the form of evil omens, superstitions, philosophies, and beliefs that were wrapped around them like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described the human skin. He clothed the bones with skin. As Allah says in the Quran, فَكَسَوْنَا الْعِظَامَ لَحْمًا ثُمَّ أَنْشَأْنَاهُمْ خَلْقًا آخَرَ فَتَبَارَكَ اللَّهُ أَحْسَنُ الْخَالِقِينَ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, and then He's mentioning the stages of the birth of the child. He said, and then when the child becomes bones, ثُمَّ كَسَوْنَا الْعِظَامَ لَحْمًا, then we clothe the bones with flesh. Right? Their idolatry, they have become so steeped in their idolatry, it almost resembled how the bones are clothed with flesh. In the terms of evil omens, superstitions, philosophies, beliefs, And this provided the Arabs during that time with a comfort zone of dysfunction. Point. A comfort zone of dysfunction. Here we are. Many of us in the African American Muslim community, we have created a comfort zone around complete and utter dysfunction. It is a dysfunction when you can go into a predominantly African American Muslim community and find a sister who has been married in the same community to 5 or 6 different brothers within the same community. It's dysfunctional. That is indicative of dysfunction as a community. To have a sister who has 3, 4, 5 children by 3, 4, 5 different brothers that she was married to in the Islamic community, and her current husband, who is not even the biological father of those children, take care of those children instead of the biological fathers of those children. Dysfunction. Arabs, they created a comfort zone around the dysfunction that made it almost impossible for the Prophet ﷺ to wake them up out of that dysfunction. And it's almost like today, you try to wake the communities up and we want to be asleep. We want to remain in our dysfunction. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had to tell the Prophet ﷺ in many ayats in the Quran. And surah number 27, ayah 81, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا أَنْتَ بِهَادِ الْعُمْيَ عَنْ ضَلَالَتِهِمْ. You cannot guide, O Muhammad, the blind away from their dalala, away from their deviance. You cannot guide them away from their being astray, their being unconscious. You cannot guide them away from that. وَمَا أَنْتَ بِهَادِ الْعُمْيَ عَنْ ضَلَالَتِهِمْ. You cannot guide those who are blind. الْعُمْيَ عَنْ ضَلَالَتِهِمْ. You cannot guide those who are blind away from their, perversion, away from their deviance. إِن تُسْمِعْ مَنْ يُؤْمِنُ بِآيَاتِنَا فَهُمْ مُسْلِمُونَ. You can only cause those to hear, those who believe in our signs, while they totally submit to us. وَهُمْ مُسْلِمُونَ. فَهُمْ مُسْلِمُونَ. And another ayat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam about his uncle Abu Talib. He said, إِنَّكَ لَا تَهْدِي مَنْ أَحْبَبْتَ لَكِنَّ اللَّهَ يَهْدِي مَنْ يَشَاءُ. You cannot guide those whom you love, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides whom He wills. So Allah had to make that very clear to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that you are not going to be able to guide everybody at one time. And that's something that we need to understand. Because every one of us, although African American Muslims, we share the same, heritage. 3, 4 generations out of slavery. We share the same heritage, but we ain't all on the same trajectory. Make no mistake about that. We not all on the same page. There's some that are working against progress in our communities, and we need to identify them and isolate them, put them in a padded room so they can't hurt anybody but themselves. Not going to destroy the progress of our communities. Our children deserve it. Our children deserve it. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he had to understand. For those of you who are on, Facebook Live. If it's not working properly, then you can go to Periscope, inshallah. You can go to Periscope, it's on. But this provided the Arabs with a comfort zone of dysfunction that made it almost impossible for the Prophet ﷺ to wake them up. As human beings are creatures of habit. Point. Human beings are creatures of habit, even with things and people that are detrimental to our own well-being. How? How is it that we could be involved in a situation that is so dysfunctional and stay in it? Because the person would get frustrated and say, well, you're trying to wake these people up, but it seems like they want to remain asleep. It's like a woman who's in a domestically abusive marriage, right? And for those of us who sit from a place of privilege, we would say, why in the world would she stay in a situation like that? The guy's beating her relentlessly. Why would she stay in a situation like that? And we're saying that because we're speaking from a place of privilege. But to that woman, even though there's domestic abuse going on in that relationship, that is the most stable environment in her life. No matter how dysfunctional it is to us, it's It represents stability for her. Human beings are creatures of habit because we find comfort in consistency, no matter how dysfunctional it is. This is how people go to jail, right? And they become institutionalized. You now have your freedom, your release, free to go, but you still function like an inmate. You still desire the 3 hots in the cot even after you are free. Because human beings, we find comfort in consistency, no matter how dysfunctional it is. So while you're telling the woman, you need to get out of that relationship, he's beating you, you need to get out, she's thinking, well, I don't know what's on the other side, but I do know what's here. And although he beats me, right, I'm still comfortable. I have a roof over my head. I have food in the refrigerator, right? He does pay the bills. You understand? But where you're telling me to go, to get out of there, go live in a shelter, go find a job, that's a long journey, right? As if any of you shoot pool, right? We used to say when we shoot pool, too much green for you, right? Meaning the pool table is too long, and you getting the chances of you getting the ball in that hole, with all of that green in front of you is highly improbable, right? It's the journey is too long for her. So she would much rather stay where she is. And some of us are like that. We love dysfunction and we'll stay where we are. All right? As the Prophet sallallahu there's a statement, one person's craziness is another person's reality. Point. One person's craziness is another person's reality. So while you sit back and you say, that's crazy, to that person, that's their reality. And they're living that. All right? So, as the saying goes, life begins at the end of your comfort zone. Even when the Prophet ﷺ began to call them away from the shirk that they were committing, they would retort with comments like, as Allah mentions, إِنَّهُمْ كَانُوا إِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ يَسْتَكْبِرُونَ وَيَقُولُونَ أَإِنَّا لَتَارِكُوا آلِهَتِنَا لِشَاعِرٍ مَجْنُونَ. That when it is said to them, the disbelievers of Quraysh, when it is said to them, La ilaha illallah, nothing worthy of worship except Allah, they become arrogant and haughty. And they say, are we going to leave our idols for the statement of Sha'irun Majnoon, for this mad poet? And another ayah, they say that this is Wajadna alayhi aba'ana. We found our forefathers on this. Are we going to leave it? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala retorts, أَوَلَوْ كَانَ آبَاؤُهُمْ لَا يَعْقِلُونَ شَيْئًا وَلَا يَهْتَدُونَ. Even if your fathers didn't understand anything and nor were they rightly guided, you still going to remain on that dysfunction? Even though your forefathers had no knowledge and they were not rightly guided. So life begins at the end of your comfort zone. And I think that we've reached the end of our comfort zone and our communities. And we are now transitioning into a different phase, a different stage. Our situation is dictating that. Our lives right now under the Trump presidency has now dictated that we move beyond wherever we were for the past 20 years. So a comfort zone, let me break this down for you. A comfort zone is tantamount to a state of sleep, which abilities like consciousness and critical thinking are rendered temporarily inoperable. Point. Comfort zones. Cult behavior. It enables, it renders skills like critical thinking and consciousness of the world that is around you, right? When you're involved in a cult, you don't understand the world that is around you. You understand the narrative that is fed to you. You follow me? You don't understand the world around you. You are fed the narrative that they want to feed you. Critical thinking, you're not allowed to challenge. When you say, well, what's the Sheikh's dalil? Then it is said to you, who are you to question the Sheikh? The Sheikh knows more than us, right? They say things like this, and that makes you sink right back into that place where you cannot use your intellect. We say to everyone else, you got to bring dalil. Where's his dalil for that? But then we'll allow a whole plethora of scholars to say this one about this one about this, with zero dalil. And then when you ask the person, well, where's the Sheikh's dalil? Then you're now blamed for being disrespectful. You see how that works? You see how the mind, the trickery, you see how it works? It's the double standard. When you say something out of your mouth, you have to produce dalil for everything that comes out of your mouth. But when someone that is feeding you the narrative feeds you the narrative, they don't need necessarily to quote you any dalil, because the sheikh said. You guys follow me, or you still sleep? Stay woke. We're gonna continue to drive this point home until you guys are out of this complete state of sleep, right? And then you'll figure it out. Indecision eventually becomes decision. You'll figure it out. I believe that many of the brothers and sisters in our communities are highly intelligent. And you don't necessarily need a degree to be highly intelligent. Many brothers and sisters are highly intelligent, but your ability to critically think has been stifled. Stifled because you're being told you don't understand Islam. You're ignorant. And we sit in front of you with the same book, regurgitating to you the same kalam. 20 years go by and you're still sitting in the same place. You're still sitting in the same place. No progress, no forward motion, no forward moving, nothing. And, it's time to wake up, man. So comfort zone is tantamount to a state of sleep where abilities like consciousness, critical thinking are all rendered temporarily inoperable. And like waking someone up who is asleep, when you try to wake them up and bring them into a different state of consciousness, what happens? What happens when you try to wake someone up who's in a deep sleep? Huh? They get upset. They're going to become hostile, right, towards you because you woke them up out of sleep. So here we are, waking people up out of sleep. Are proponents of that. They're going to be met with some hostility, and that's okay. Because here again, you got to be able to stand in your space. You got to be able to stand in your truth unapologetically. All right? Understand something. Absolute truth is too powerful to be digested without the process of spiritual cultivation. Point. I'll say that again. Absolute truth is too powerful for anyone to digest without the process of spiritual cultivation. How is that? When you look at the Quran, was the Quran revealed all at one time? How long did it take the Quran to be revealed? 23 years. It's a 23-year period for us to digest all of this. We haven't even begun that journey because many of us haven't memorized much Quran. You can tell me what this sheikh said, that sheikh said, but if I ask how many people in this room, and don't raise your hands, how many people in this room have memorized the last 30 of juz of the Quran? I would probably say, with my eyes closed, probably around 2, if that. And there's something wrong with that picture, because if we're on the Quran and the Sunnah, but nobody has memorized Quran, then how much Quran and Sunnah can we really be on? You follow me? Nobody's sitting in classes and lessons learning Quran. You're being fed a narrative over and over and over again. And no matter how many times people come to you and say, hey, listen, you need to wake up, man. Time is passing you by and you're still stuck in the same place. You say, no, we're on the haq, we're learning this, we're learning Tawheed, we're learning this. You're like, no, you're not. You're not, actually. You're supposed to be on the Quran and the Sunnah, but there's no Quran being learned. If I asked how many people have memorized the 40 hadith of Imam al-Nawawi, I would say, hands down, nobody in this room has memorized the 40 hadith of Imam al-Nawawi, and that's only 40 hadith. 40 short hadith. The longest hadith in the 40 hadith of Imam al-Nawawi is the hadith of Jibreel. It's the longest hadith in the book. In English. Give it to me in English. You ain't even got to give it to me in Arabic. Give it to me in English. But yet we'll say we're on the Quran and the Sunnah. But nobody knows the Quran and nobody knows the Sunnah. You guys following me? Do you see anything wrong with that picture? Anything wrong with that picture? For a whole group of people to say, we're on the Quran and the Sunnah, but nobody has memorized the Quran, and very few know actually what Sunnah is. There's something wrong with that picture, because we're just being fed a narrative and then we just regurgitate it. You understand? So, very important for us to understand what's happening here. Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, she said, لو نزل أول ما نزل أول شيء لا تشربوا الخمر لقال الناس لن ندع الخمر. Aisha said, if the first thing revealed from the Quran had been, don't drink alcohol, don't drink intoxicants, don't digest intoxicants, the people would have said, we will never give up intoxicants. She said, if the first thing revealed from the Quran, la taznu, do not commit fornication, the people would have said, we will never give up fornication. What is Aisha telling us? That the natural state of the human being, when you are woken up out of sleep just abruptly, and you're given something so powerful like this, your natural response is to go against it. Your natural response is to be in opposition. You follow me? That's human nature. When you try to force feed somebody something, our natural response is to reject it. The Quraysh, they said to the Prophet ﷺ, as Allah revealed in the Quran, that if the Quran, why hasn't the Quran been revealed to him all at once? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in surah number 25, surah Al-Furqan, ayah 32. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَقَالَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا, and those who disbelieve say, لَوْلَا نُزِّلَ عَلَيْهِ الْقُرْآنِ جُمْلَةً وَاحِدًا. Why hasn't the Quran been given to him all at one time? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala retorted, وَكَذَلِكَ لِنُثَبِّتَ بِهِ فُؤَادَكَ وَرَتَّلْنَاهُ تَرْتِيلًا. No, we have revealed it to you intermittently, so that we may strengthen your heart with it. وَرَتَّلْنَاهُ تَرْتِيلًا. And we recite it to you in stages. Allah did not give the Quran to the Prophet ﷺ all at once, because no one can handle it like that. So then you have all of these students of knowledge and these, people who can quote all this Arabic, feeding you a narrative, feeding you sciences of hadith like jarh wa ta'dil and all of these different sciences that is above our understanding. And the natural reaction is for people to take an opposition to that. And then when you look at our practice of Islam is not when you see a Muslim, he's actually practicing Islam. We straighten up when we see another Muslim because we want you to believe that we're actually practicing Islam. You follow me? Because we've done the exact opposite of what the Prophet ﷺ did with the Sahaba. He fed them Islam bit by bit, starting with the small matters of knowledge and then begin to increase once he started to see that people were firm in their beliefs. We didn't have that. Our leaders taught us, many of our Muslim leaders dropped everything on us at one time. There was no spoon feeding you Islam. Everything was, oh brother, you got to pull your pants up above your ankles. Oh brother, you got to go your beard. Oh brother, where's this? Oh brother, you got to stop doing that. Oh brother, stay away from this brother. Oh brother, don't pray there. And it's just like you become overwhelmed. You become overwhelmed to the point where you say, you know what, this is too much for me. And you eventually end up leaving Islam. Which is why in a lot of the Salafi communities, the turnover rate is so fast. The average Salafi who embraces that interpretation of Islam. I'm not saying that Salafiyya is not correct. I'm saying that interpretation of Salafiyya is incorrect. Look at the blueprint. Need I say any more? Look at the communities. I don't need to tell you that it's incorrect. You can look for yourself and you can surmise that can't possibly be the truth. If we can look at what the truth did with the Prophet ﷺ in his community, then we should be able to see that blueprint played out in another community. And it doesn't matter whether it's our modern day communities. We should be able to see that played out. But we don't see it. I don't need to say that that's not correct. You can figure that out for yourselves. But the Prophet ﷺ, the Quran was not given to him all at one time, because it was desired, it was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was nurturing the Sahaba for the long haul, not for the short term. See, we gravitate towards this particular dawah, that dawah, and it's very short-lived, because there was no scaffolding, there was no foundational building until the person got to a point where they were strong in their faith, and now they're able to walk on their own. That's not the way that Islam is taught in our communities. And that's a problem, because you got people going in and out of the masjid doors becomes a revolving door. You don't know how many emails I've received since doing the lecture Reclaiming Our Communities from brothers and sisters who said, I used to be Muslim. I listened to your lecture, and now I'm trying to find my way back to Islam. They chased me away from Islam. How many people sent me emails like, it's ridiculous, man. And it's sad, and it's indicative of a bigger problem in our communities. Nonetheless, when the Prophet ﷺ received revelation, Khadija took him to a man by the name of Waraqah ibn Nufal, who was not necessarily a Christian, but he had knowledge of Scripture. He had knowledge of Scripture. And when Khadija took the Prophet ﷺ to Waraqah, she said, explain to him what happened to you. And he's explaining to her the incident in the cave with Angel Jibreel. And Waraqah, he says to the Prophet ﷺ, pay attention, this is another point. He says to the Prophet ﷺ, هذا الناموس الذي نزل الله على موسى. He said, that is the same angel that Allah, God, sent to Prophet Moses. He knew from the description that the Prophet was giving him of the incident that happened in the cave. He knew, he said, that was the same angel that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent to Prophet Musa. Then he said, يَا لَيْتَنِي فِيهَا جَذَعًا. I wish I was younger. He said, لَيْتَنِي أَكُونُ حَيًّا إِذْ يُخْرِجُكَ قَوْمُكَ. He said, I wish I would be alive to see the day when your people turn on you. Why are they turning on him? Because they sleep, and he's trying to wake them up. And they're going to turn on you. Same thing that happened to Malcolm X. We see the blueprint, how that plays out. You try to wake people up. Some people just not ready to be woke. And they will kill you to stay asleep. They will kill you to stay asleep. He said that I wish I was younger, and I wish I could live to see the day when your people turn on you. And the Prophet ﷺ, as any man not realizing how powerful of a position that you're in, right? They say you don't recognize your celebrity, right? These are rappers, hood rappers, who not realizing that you're no longer just a neighborhood rapper, and then you come back to the hood and people see you, blinging, and you get robbed, you get tied up, and things happen to you because you underestimated your celebrity. You're not realizing that you're no longer functioning on the same frequency. It's a little different now. And the Prophet ﷺ didn't understand that. He said, are my people going to turn on me? From Quraysh and from Bani Hashim. He said, are my people going to turn on me? And Waraqah, he said to the Prophet ﷺ, Na'am. He said, yes. He said, لم يأتي رجل قط بمثل ما جئت به إلا أودي. He said, no one has ever come with what you are coming with, except that they have been opposed and the people turn on them. What did he say? Point. Pay attention. Nobody has come with the like of what you are coming with, except the people turn on him. We see the blueprint. All of the list of the people that they say don't take from, those people are actually doing something right. Because no one comes with the like of what you are coming with, except the people turn on them. When you see someone saying, oh, don't take from him, don't listen to him, you might want to listen to him. At least do your own research before you decide not to listen to this one, right? Because there are some people out there you shouldn't listen to. And a lot of times it's the person that's telling you, don't listen to this one or that one. He's the person that you shouldn't be listening to. But there are some people legitimately, haqqan, that you should be cautious of. However, you should be the one to make that decision. Don't let other people make that decision for you. And if you decide that I don't listen to this one, I don't take from that one, then that was totally based upon your research, your critical analyzation, not someone else's forced opinion on you. You follow me? And so for the next 3 years, the Prophet ﷺ, he conveyed the message of Islam in its most basic elementary form, meaning Tawheed, mostly in secret. The Prophet ﷺ did not go out in public and give Dawa. He gave Dawa secretly. And many people embraced Islam during that 3-year span. Right? Revelation stopped. Once Allah revealed to him, Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq, those first 5 ayahs from Surah Alaq, revelation stopped. Nothing else came to him for the next 3 years. Right? So you could only imagine the Prophet ﷺ still, he had that experience with Jibreel, but he didn't let the 3 years that went by make him believe, oh, well, maybe it was just a thing, something that just happened. No, he knew that he was on to something. And so he patiently gave da'wah for 3 years secretly. And most of the people that embraced Islam during that 3 years embraced Islam at the hands of Abu Bakr, not at the hands of the Prophet ﷺ, because Abu Bakr was well respected in Meccan society, so he was able to go out in public and, give da'wah. And many people embraced Islam at the hands of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. As a matter of fact, he was the first man to embrace Islam. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Ma da'awtu ahadan ila al-Islam illa kanat fihi kabwatun illa Abi Bakr." He said that I never called anyone to Islam except that they had some hesitation about what I was saying. With the exception of Abu Bakr. He never hesitated. The moment I called him to Islam, he believed in it immediately. There was no hesitation. And many of the people who embraced Islam during that time was Uthman ibn Affan. Within that 3-year gap, Uthman ibn Affan, he embraced Islam. Az-Zubayr ibn Awam, he embraced Islam. Abdurrahman ibn Auf, Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, Talha ibn Ubaidillah, and many others from the nobles of Quraysh in Mecca. Ibn Hisham, he mentions in his seerah that 53 individuals embraced Islam during that 3-year gap when the Prophet ﷺ gave da'wah secretly. And only 10 of the 53 were slaves. Point. Pay attention. Only 10 out of the 53 that embraced Islam were slaves. Only 10 were from the lower tiers of Meccan society. Why is this so significant? Why is this significant? I want to see who's woke. Out of the 53 people who embraced Islam in that 3-year gap, only 10 of them were slaves. That's a very small percentage. Why does that matter to us? Why? What significance does that have for us? Huh? Say it again.
The poor people quicker to follow, and the 43 they would have some type of status or something. So
the 43 did have status. They were from the top tiers of Meccan society.
So that means it was people that was well off that was accepting Islam, right?
There were people. There you go.
Out of poverty, or 'cause they poor trying to
Thank you. That's what I'm talking about. Because we like to make it seem like Islam is a da'wah for poor people. No. Only a small percentage of the people who embraced Islam were slaves, like Bilal, like Suhaib, like Miqdad ibn Aswad. There was only a small percentage, which means that most of their da'wah efforts were focused on who? The rich, the elite from society, not the poor. Right? See, what we do is the total opposite. So we don't want to work and, get jobs and go out into the world. Right? I don't want to work for the kuffar. Right? It's no different than the Nation of Islam. The white man is the devil, right? Carry that over, right? So we go into the prison system. And we go after inmates, vulnerable inmates. And we feed them this narrative, this very shallow narrative of Islam. and then have them now become the vast majority. If the vast majority of the people in your Islamic community are people who are inmates who came home from prison, and that's the vast majority of the people that are in our communities, we hustling backwards. Because as a convicted felon, you have limitations. As a convicted felon, you have limitations. And there's only but so far you are going to be able to carry Islam as a convicted felon. You're not licensed to carry as a convicted felon. They just recently allowed convicted felons to vote, and that's only because we know the voting system is not designed to benefit us, right? We weren't even considered human beings when the Constitution was written. It wasn't written for you and me. We were still slaves when the Constitution was written. So it wasn't designed for us. The point that I'm making is that if only a small percentage of those who embraced Islam were from the lower tiers of Arabian society, then that means that their Dawa efforts were focused on the more elite from society. Because when you go after middle, upper class people, giving them Dawa, these are the type of people that are going to affect change on a social political level. These are your people who are your business owners. These are the people who have degrees, come from higher levels of society. You guys following me? When you have the vast majority of our convert community or the vast majority of our second generation Muslim communities, and most of them don't have degrees. Most of them barely have high school diplomas. None of them own businesses. None of them own property. None of them have substantial amounts of money where they can write checks to the masjid so that we can progress and they not hurt in the process. If you're having a whole bunch of communities like this, then we're working to our own destruction, not to our own benefit. You guys following me? How far are we going to be able to go when you're telling people it's haram for them to go to college? How far can you go with a community full of GED holders? How far are you going to go with that? Please tell me. You have limitations. And this is how you can look back at this dawah and tell that this cannot possibly be Quran and Sunnah. Quh, as the Arabs say. Pure Quran and Sunnah. Can't possibly be it. Because when you look at the blueprint, I'm giving you the blueprint right here to show you how they conveyed Islam and how they were able to build their communities. When a person like Abu Bakr accepts Islam, when a person like Abdurrahman ibn Auf, who was one of the wealthiest men in Mecca, he was one of the wealthiest men in Mecca. Uthman ibn Affan, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, one of the wealthiest men in Mecca. These were wealthy men. Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, one of the wealthiest people in Mecca. So when you have people who have wealth that are embracing Islam, then you can do things like this. When the Prophet ﷺ, when he entered into Mecca, Medina, they decided that the first thing they were going to do was build a masjid, right? So the Prophet ﷺ let his camel go, Qaswa, let her walk. And he said, wherever she stops, that's where we're going to build the masjid. The place where the camel stopped, it was a piece of land that belonged to two orphans. The two orphans, they said, we'll give it to the Prophet ﷺ, sadaqah. The Prophet ﷺ, no. A man of integrity, no. Who bought the land? Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu paid for the land, paid for. This is what happens when you have people, jazakumullahu khairan. They make it all worth it. They make it all worth it. They deserve a better chance than we had. They deserve it. And if it has to be because of our blood, sweat, tears, if it has to be because of our life, wallah al-azim, I'm ready. But they deserve a better opportunity at Quran and Sunnah. And the only way that that's going to happen is when we start to make some changes. And some people are going to be uncomfortable. And that's okay. Because we have to learn how to stand in our discomfort. So this refutes the claim that Islam only appeals to the slaves and the marginalized of Meccan society. More notable individuals like Abu Ubaidah ibn Jarrah, Arqam ibn Abi Arqam, Suhayb al-Rumi, Khalid ibn Sa'id, Umair ibn Abi Waqqas, etc. All of these people embraced Islam during that time. the Prophet ﷺ would pray with them in secret 2 rak'ah before sunrise and 2 rak'ah before sunset. And this continued all the way until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed a very, very important ayah in the Quran. Surah number 26, ayah 214, Surah Ash-Shu'ara. When this ayah was revealed, it changed everything. And now the Prophet ﷺ had to stand in his truth. This ayah, Surah number 26, ayah 214. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to the Prophet ﷺ, وَأَنذِرَ عَشِيرَتَكَ الْأَقْرَبِينَ. Stand and warn your family and your close relatives. Stand and warn your close family and your relatives. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed another ayat. First 7 ayats of Surah Al-Mudaththir. Ya ayyuhal mudaththir. Qum wa'anzir. Qum fa'anzir. O you wrapped in garments, stand, arise, and go warn. There was no going back after that. There was no giving da'wah secretly. He had to now, by the commandment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after 3 years, he had to now stand up and go out into the public and give da'wah. Changed everything in his life. And this is what I'm telling you guys about creating comfort zones. Don't get comfortable. Because you have to learn how to change with change. When that change comes, you can no longer, stay the same. It's no longer the same anymore. It requires you to change. So the Prophet ﷺ, he stood on the mountain of Safa and he began to call all of the tribes of Quraysh. He said, Ya Bani Ka'b, Anqidhu anfusakum min an-nar. O tribe of Ka'b, save yourselves from the hellfire. He said, Ya Bani Abd al-Shams, Anqidhu anfusakum min an-nar. O tribe of Abd al-Shams, save yourselves from the hellfire. He said, وَيَا بَنِي عَبْدِ الْمَنَافِ أَنْقِذُوا أَنفُسَكُم مِّنَ النَّارِ. Save yourselves from the hellfire. And he began to call Bani Hashim, Bani Abdul Muttalib. He said to his own daughter Fatima, save yourself from the hellfire. فَإِنِّي وَاللَّهِ لَا أَمْلِكُ لَكُم مِّنَ اللَّهِ شَيْئًا. Because I cannot help you against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this changed everything. These words fell upon the hearts of Quraysh like a boulder from the sky. It ushered in a new reality. And sometimes we don't understand that with one decision, we can change the dynamics of our lives, and it never goes back to being. Once you become woke to certain things, you cannot go back to sleep. You have to now stand in your new reality, and that's what it means to be resilient. To accept your new reality as it is, and learn how to stand in that truth, regardless of how difficult things get. Waraqah already told the Prophet ﷺ, your people are going to turn against you. He already knew it. And then Allah commanded him to now take his da'wah and go public with it. So now you got to imagine the Prophet ﷺ, one man. All of this stuff is coming at him very fast. Waraqah tells him, your people are going to turn on you. So now he's waiting. When is that time going to come? Now it comes. Allah tells him, arise and warn. No longer going back. No more going back to Muhammad ibn Abdullah. You are now Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam wasn't in a position to defend himself because he didn't have resources. He didn't have resources. And this is similar to what I said in the khutbah earlier. That we claim that, you have people who say, okay, these people are astray, those people are astray, right? And they'll isolate themselves to this little corner with zero resources. I always found that to be amazing. How are you going to isolate yourself on an island with no resources? Financially, politically, otherwise. You have no resources. Many in the Salafi community, they have zero resources. You're apolitical. You don't get involved in politics. Right? You're antisocial. You don't mix and mingle with the other Muslims to network and, bring resources into your community. You're on an island all by yourself with very, very extremely limited resources. How in the world are you ever going to progress? You have no resources. The Prophet ﷺ had to use even some of the non-Muslims in Meccan society at that time. He had to use some of their resources, starting with his uncle Abu Talib, protecting him so he can give da'wah. Protecting him so he can give da'wah. And he protected him all the way up until the time that he died. But the Prophet ﷺ, he wasn't allowed to defend himself because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had not given him permission to do so. And as Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, Al-jihad bil-hujja wal-lisan muqaddimun ala jihad bil-sayfi wal-sinan. He said the jihad bil-hujja wal-bayan, the jihad of the pen, the jihad of the clarification and the articulation is more powerful and supersedes the jihad of the sword. The fighting with the tongue, the fighting with the pen is more powerful and supersedes the fighting with the sword. And that is what the period in Mecca represented. Jihad bil-hujja wal-bayan. The Prophet ﷺ, there was no fighting. Allah had not permitted the believers to fight. So the only thing that the Prophet ﷺ had at that point was his tongue and what he believed and his faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he had to stand on that. Allah would take care of the rest. Allah would take care of the rest. But at that point, that's all he had. Ibn Ishaq, he said, كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يمر بعمار وأمه وأبيه وهم يعذبون بأبطح في رمضان مكة فيقول صبرا يا آل ياسر فإن موعدكم الجنة. And the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, on one occasion, he passed by the family of Ammar ibn Yasir, his father Yasir and his mother Sumayya. He passed by them that while they were being tortured. They were being tortured. Yasir's face was pushed down into the sand, the hot burning sand. And they were tortured, and eventually Sumayya was killed. Abu Jahl is responsible for killing Sumayya, marking her as the first martyr in Islam. And the Prophet ﷺ couldn't do anything about it. His hands was tied. And he simply said to them, Sabran ya Ali Yasir, be patient, O family of Yasir, for indeed your final destination is Jannah. Can you imagine that you're commanded to give da'wah under these circumstances and seeing the people who say they believe in you being tortured and you can't do anything about it? The Prophet ﷺ didn't turn on his heels and say, you know what, later with this, I can't handle this. He had to stand in his truth. And that's what I'm talking about. Being able to see that, but still believe that you are on the truth and that not divert you away from what you believe. That takes a certain kind of individual. There's a certain kind of individual that can withstand that type of pressure. And the Prophet ﷺ was all the way built for it. All the way. He never got weak-hearted, never got faint-hearted and turned away. And so Sumayya is marked in Islam as the first martyr in Islam. And we have to, understand as we transition that our women don't get caught out of there. Our women don't become martyrs in our communities as we're transitioning from this state of sleep to a state of wakefulness. That we don't lose our women in the process. They are the most vulnerable of our communities. They are the most vulnerable in our communities, and we have to do what is in our power to protect them and make sure that we don't fall victim in taking advantage of their vulnerability. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, or the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he swore by Allah. He said, I swear by Allah that I will maintain the rights of the two weak individuals, the two vulnerable people in my community, and that is the orphan and the women. I will protect their rights. This is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam swearing by Allah. And we have to be those people. We can't see the sisters in our communities vulnerable, no husbands, very shallow pool of men to choose from, and we just taking advantage of them. The Prophet ﷺ said, I swear by Allah that I will protect the rights of the two vulnerable people in my community, and that is the orphans and the women. The Prophet ﷺ, his daughters were divorced as a sign of shame. His daughters, Kulthum and Ruqayya, they were married to the two sons of Abu Lahab before the Prophet became the Prophet. He married his daughters to two of the sons of Abu Lahab, Utbah and Utaybah. These were Abu Lahab's sons. And the Prophet ﷺ married his daughters to them. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the surah, Tabbat yada abi lahab wa tab, curse the hands of Abu Lahab, the only one of Quraysh that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned by name in the Quran. Allah said, cursed is the hands of Abu Lahab. And the Prophet ﷺ had to recite this in public. And when Abu Lahab heard that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cursed him, he told his two sons to divorce the daughters of the Prophet ﷺ as a sign to humiliate him. We're going to divorce your daughters. And the Prophet ﷺ, it wasn't actually a humiliation because they hadn't consummated the marriages yet. So therefore it was actually a sign of honor that the Prophet ﷺ's daughters were not even married to mushrikun, or not, marriage wasn't consummated by those who were disbelievers. Nonetheless, the Prophet ﷺ ended up marrying Ruqayya first to a man by the name of Uthman ibn Affan. And then when she died during the Battle of Badr, during that time she died, the Prophet ﷺ married him to his second daughter, Kulthum. And the Prophet ﷺ, after Kulthum died, right, the 9th year after Hijrah, he said, Wallahi, if I had another daughter, I would marry her to you. That's how fond of Uthman he was, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then they called his uncle to appeal to him. Quraysh, they couldn't get the Prophet ﷺ to stop. Pay attention, this is another point. They couldn't get the Prophet ﷺ to stop giving dawah. So what did they do? They went to his uncle. In war, love is your Achilles heel. You understand? When a person can't hurt you, they're going to go after the people that you love. It happens in marriages, divorces. You separate from a woman when she can no longer control how people see you. If she can no longer control you, she wants to now control how people see you, how people feel about you. She's going to control the narrative regardless, and vice versa. But they went to the Prophet ﷺ's uncle. And they called his uncle to appeal to him, to appeal to the Prophet ﷺ, because they knew that the Prophet ﷺ's relationship with his uncle was a bond that was unbreakable. All right? Love is always a vulnerability. Make no mistake about that. If you ever want to be in love, then that means that requires for you to be vulnerable. If you're not willing to be vulnerable to your spouse, then you're not willing to be in love. Because love requires vulnerability. Matter of fact, love is the greatest vulnerability. Go after the people that you love. So they went to Abu Talib, and I'll conclude after this point. They went to Abu Talib and they said, talk to your nephew. He's, disrupting, our society. He's dismantling our socioeconomics, because make no mistake about it, shirk was about money. Idolatry in pre-Islamic Meccan society was about money. How? Because it was big business. They sell idols. If a woman wanted to get pregnant, she went to the marketplace, she bought an idol, and she prayed to that idol to pray to Allah to make her pregnant so she could have children. It was big money in that. So when the Prophet ﷺ emerged with the da'wah of La ilaha illallah, make no mistake about it, it wasn't because of La ilaha illallah. It was because it was infringing on the socioeconomic stability of their society. See, you don't get that in Tawheed classes, your average 101 Tawheed class. You don't get that. Why? Because the people who are teaching Tawheed, many of them, they don't understand. They have no connection to the world beyond the four walls of their masjid. So they're not able to connect Tawheed to the world that you live in, so that you can actualize Tawheed, so that it looks real in real time. But no, they'll have you with this fairy tale picture book version of Tawheed, making you believe that all your problems is as a result of you not understanding Tawheed. And the moment you understand Tawheed, all of your problems will go away. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. And some of us, we drink the Kool-Aid. Oh, brother, you got to understand Tawheed. It's like, dude, are you serious? You haven't begun to connect Tawheed. There's something in education called text-to-world connections, text-to-self connections, and text-to-text connections. So let me give you the blueprint for this. Text to world connections. That means to sit with a book, sit with a text in front of you, and be able to connect the text that is in front of you to the world that you live in. If you don't know how to do that, then you reading the book is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. You can read 100 books. If you cannot connect what is in that book to the world that you live in, then you will never be able to actualize the information that's in the book. Then there's what's called text to self connections. That means the book that is in front of you, the text that is in front of you, learning how to connect that to you. How do you see yourself in this text? How does it relate to you? How does it resonate with you? If you are not doing that, then you are not learning. And then there's what is called text to text connection. Taking the text that is in front of you and connecting it with your previous knowledge and other books and other information that you have. And if you don't read any other books, then guess what? You live on an island all by yourself. Oh, don't read the books of the kuffar. I don't even understand what that means. Don't read the books of the kuffar. This is the language that we were fed in our communities for years. Don't read the books of the kuffar. You invite a brother to come to your house, you got a huge selection, mashallah. And the brother's looking through your bookshelf. He's like, why you got all of these non-Muslim books up here, this kafir stuff, this secular? Brother, you need to fear Allah. It's that type of mentality that will keep us from progressing. Those type of people wouldn't even be allowed to come in my house. Because your thinking is so shallow, so elementary. You couldn't even fight your way out of the own paper bag that you put yourself in. Let alone help somebody get out of a paper bag that you believe they in. How in the world could you say, don't read the books of this one, don't read the books of that one? How in the world is your worldview going to expand if all you read is Islam from a fairy tale, from a picture book perspective? How in the world is your worldview going to expand? I don't understand that. But this is, what we're fed in our communities. And as a result, you have some people who, throw the books out, don't buy anything but Islamic books. That doesn't make you religious because all you read is Islamic books. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. So that makes you more religious because all you read is Islamic books. That makes you religious. That makes you better than somebody else because all you read is Islamic books. No, you're more shallow than everybody else. That's all it makes you. And I mean, different strokes for different folks. You can say, well, I don't necessarily agree with you. All I read is Islamic books. To you be your way and to me be my way. To each his own. I'm not superimposing my views on people. But I'm saying if we're going to progress and we're going to move forward as a community, then there are secular sciences that complement Islamic sciences. There are secular sciences that complement Islamic sciences, like math. How in the world are you going to calculate your zakat if you don't know how to count? The Quran is a book of science. How in the world are you going to make connections to what Allah mentions about the earth, what Allah mentions about the stars? There's an entire chapter in the Quran called the Surah An-Najm, the surah, the chapter of the star. But you go to the average Quran and Sunnah follower and you have no idea. No idea what the constellation of the stars, the moon, the sun, how do people even worship these things? Ibrahim's conversation with his people. And remember when Ibrahim said, when he saw the sun, that is my Lord. Hada Rabbi, Hada Akbar. This is the greatest of all of the stars in the sky. That must be God. And he was appealing to his people who were sun and moon worshipers. You understand what I'm saying? But you only read the Quran because you don't understand. So Abu Talib, he goes to the Prophet ﷺ trying to get his nephew to calm down. Take it easy. So listen to this conversation and we'll conclude here. Abu Talib, he says to the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Ya ibn akhi, oh my nephew. He said, Inna qawmaka qad ja'uni. He said, your people came to me. Your people have come to me, meaning Quraysh. فَقَالُوا لِي كَذَا وَكَذَا. And they said to me this about you and that about you and that about you. He said, فَأَبْقِي عَلَيَّ وَعَلَى نَفْسِكَ وَلَا تَحْمِلْنِي مِنَ الْأَمْرِ مَا لَا أُطِيقُ. He said, so Muhammad, he said, leave room for us to reconcile with our people. And don't put me and yourself in a situation that we can't get out of. Don't go too far. All right, so you're trying to put limitations on something that doesn't recognize limitations. Haq, truth, point. Truth does not recognize limitations. It will take you as far as you are willing to go with it. Follow me. Truth doesn't recognize limitations. You can't say, okay, you can be on the haq all the way up to this point, okay, and then you have to stop, right? This is what they tried to do with Malcolm. Once he saw the Nation of Islam for what it was, there was no limitations. When you say, all right, you can't speak anymore, right? They did the same thing to Malcolm. So funny how history repeats itself. So you have a sheikh who sits from, hundreds of miles, thousands of miles away, knows absolutely nothing about our society, our community, and he says, oh, this person can't give dawah. Come on, man. You serious? This person can't give dawah. You shouldn't be giving dawah. It's like, what does that mean? So that means that if my non-Muslim sister or brother comes to me asking me about Islam, because this sheikh said I shouldn't be giving dawah, I shouldn't say anything to them about Islam. I should tell them to go ask somebody else because the sheikh told me not to give dawah. Do you see how absurd and how insane that sounds? For a person to even look at our environment and our society and say, you shouldn't be giving dawah. I mean, subhanallah al-azim. There were people who came through Islam, through the Nation of Islam. People who converted to Islam through Sufism. People who converted to Islam through Shiitism. People who converted through Islam through many and then found the Quran and the Sunnah. Are we going to tell them they shouldn't give dawah? You will find the truth if that's what you're looking for. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has it written for you. But to say to a person, because of some perceived mistake you believe they had, that they should not be giving dawah anymore in an environment where they're surrounded by majority kuffar, non-Muslims, and you're telling the person not to give dawah, do you understand how insane that sounds? But that's because we've, handed the keys of our communities to people who really don't care about our communities. And that's not to say all of them. There are scholars, mashallah, tabarakallah, that I love dearly, and that you could call at any given time and they would ask you, what is going on in your community here and how is that? And they would ask you before they give you a fatwa. That is a scholar that cares about your community. And you call and you say, Sheikh, there's a brother in our community who says this, who says that, whatever the case may be. And the Sheikh said, well, is he this or is he that? Is this happening? Is that happening? They want to know details before they give you a ruling, before they give you, their opinion, because that's all it is at the end of the day. It's not, revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's this person's opinion. So he said, leave room for us to reconcile with Quraysh and don't put us in a situation that we can't get out of. Listen to what the Prophet ﷺ said, and this shows you his standing in his truth. His daughters were divorced. He watched a woman get murdered, the first person to get killed for Islam. He had to give dawah in secret. All of these different things, and throughout all of that, he still stands in his space. He still stands in his truth, never moved, never budged, never moved. And he turns to his uncle and he says to his uncle, Ya Ammi, oh my uncle. He said, Wallahi, I swear by Allah, لو وضعوا الشمس في يميني والقمر في يساري على أن أترك هذا الأمر حتى لا أتركه حتى يظهره الله أو أهلك دونه ما تركته. He said, oh my uncle. He said, if they were to put the sun in my right hand and the moon in my left hand, with the condition that I abandon my mission, he said, I would never abandon my mission until Allah gives this religion what He promised it of superiority in the land, or I die in pursuit of it. Those are my only two options. There's no third option. There's no third option. I love you with all due respect. But if they want me to stop calling to La ilaha illallah, stop calling to Allah, stop doing what I'm doing. If they would have put the sun in my right hand, moon in my left hand, with the condition that I stop, he said that I will not stop until Allah gives this religion the superiority that he promised it, or I die in pursuit of it. Resilience. Stand in my truth, man. Stand in your truth. You're going to see a lot of things, man. You're going to see a lot of people come and go. You're going to see a lot of things. But the Prophet ﷺ's determination and commitment was greater than the challenges that were in front of him. Point. Your determination, your commitment has to be greater than the challenges that are in front of you. It's like somebody telling you you can't do something. And you say, okay, I can't. That means I can. When you tell me I can't do something, that tells me I can do it. And I'm not going to prove to you that I can. I'm going to prove to me that I can. It's not about you. This journey is not about you who said that I can't do it. It's about me not accepting what somebody else projects on me. So the Prophet ﷺ's determination and commitment was greater than the challenges that were in front of him. The more they pushed him, the more he advanced, and the more his determination increased. He didn't yield to their negative energy. Point. Don't yield to someone else's energy. We have a hard time doing that. Someone else comes with an energy that seems like it's either greater or the same as our energy, and we yield to it. Okay, the brother's right. No, I don't yield to your negative energy. As Allah says in the Quran in Surah Al-Ahzab, Surah number 33, ayat 22, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَمَّا رَأَى الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الْأَحْزَابَ قَالُوا هَذَا مَا وَعَدَنَا اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ وَصَدَقَ اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ وَمَا زَادَهُمْ إِلَّا إِيمَانًا وَتَسْلِيمًا. That when the believers saw the Confederates coming against them, this was the Jews, the hypocrites, and the kuffar of Quraysh. They all united against the Muslims. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and when the believers saw the Confederates coming towards them, they said, this is what Allah and His Messenger promised us. And Allah and His Messenger told us the truth. وَمَا زَادَهُمْ إِلَّا إِيمَانًا وَتَسْلِيمًا. And it only increased them in iman, in faith, and submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's will. That is how we have to be when we see challenges in front of us. It should only increase us in faith, increase us in our submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because the more you submit to Allah, the more Allah makes the dunya submit to you. And the more you yield to the world, the more Allah leaves you to fend for yourself. Point. The more you submit to Allah, the greater Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make you in the eyes of His creation. The more Allah will make the world submit to you. But the more you submit to another human being, the more humiliating your life is going to become. Submission is to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, understand this is why many of us, we accomplish very little in life. We yield to negative energy of others. And we have to learn how to stand in our own space, our own truth, and be comfortable being uncomfortable. I don't know, maybe I'm speaking from a different paradigm. But we have to learn how to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Where we are right now as a community is sad. We will make strides to, correct and improve our situation. And that's not going to happen overnight. That's not going to happen overnight. And it's not going to happen without, collateral damage. But through it all, we have to be able to say that I stood firm on principle. There's some people who don't take a stand on anything. You flip-flop. Whatever way the wind blows, that's which way you go. You don't take a stand on anything. And, and some people only take a stand against what is actually the truth. When you start seeing people speak out, then you want to take a position against them. But the people who put our communities in these situations, you never once opened your mouth in defense of your communities that you got to live in. You never once said anything in defense of the hundreds of Muslims who have been chased away from Islam. But yet and still, the moment someone opens their mouth and says something about the condition, then you want to attack them. You want to say, well, they shouldn't have said this or they shouldn't have said that. Man, miss me with that, man. Because you had 20 years of an opportunity to say something and you said nothing. Now finally when somebody says something, now you want to start putting all of these restrictions. Oh, he shouldn't have said this. Oh, he should have said it like that. He shouldn't have mentioned the sheikh's name. Oh, he shouldn't have said this. Man, miss me with that, man. Because you didn't say nothing last time I checked. Or how about I just erase everything I said and then we'll wait for you to say what you're going to say. Because it ain't going to happen. We want to sit back. And the scholars, they have a saying, Khalif tu'raf. Khalif tu'raf. Going against the grain is the quickest way to make a name for yourself. So when you see students of knowledge coming with their political jargon, right, this pseudo diplomacy, oh, well, I don't agree with Brother Shadid because he said this and he said, man, miss me with that because you're not going to say anything. 20 years went by, you said absolutely nothing. You didn't give one lecture, not one. You said nothing. And then finally, when somebody does say something, you want to say, oh, it was, emotionally charged. Why shouldn't it be emotionally charged? Why shouldn't my emotions be? Why do we say, oh, he was emotional or he was personal? As if that dismisses what was being said. As if that dismisses the truth of what was said. It's almost like we use, oh, he was emotional. Oh, that sounds personal. Anytime you go through somebody's lecture and you pick out what you believe is a mistake and then you post it on social media, that, my brother, is personal. That's personal. When you go and you listen to a 45-minute lecture and then take a 2-second clip out and then create a tagline and then post it on social media and say this person is a deviant or this person is this, that's personal. What I'm doing is not personal. What I'm doing is about our communities. What I'm doing is about preserving what is left, salvaging what is left of our communities. That's what I'm doing. So you can miss me with the whole, oh, that's personal, it's emotional, and all this other stuff, this jargon that we use to dismiss the truth of what's being said. Because the last time I checked, I didn't hear you say anything. And, I'm trying to exercise self-restraint and not calling the people out by names. I'm really trying to exercise restraint. Forgive me, I'm getting better with it. One day I'll get there. Really trying to exercise self-restraint instead of calling names out, because the fact of the matter is that as time progresses, we'll see that some of these people are actually part of the problem and not part of the solution. You're actually a liability and not an asset. And time will, time will tell. Time will tell. But the point that I'm making is that we have to up our expectations of our leadership. Leadership in our communities can no longer just sit in front of us, open up a book, and tell us what the sheikh said in the book. Tell us what the sheikh said in the book and how that relates to the environment that we live in. When you step outside of the four walls of this mosque, of this masjid, if you can't connect what we're reading from the book, connect it to the world that we live in out there, then everything that you're saying is irrelevant. It doesn't relate to me. It doesn't speak to my experience. And we need to begin to start having higher expectations of our teachers, our leaders, and our preachers. And this includes me as well. This includes me as well. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa salama tasliman kathira. Wa subhanaka rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al-mursaleen walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. I'm like 30 minutes over the time that I said I was going to stop. Nobody, the man taller. Nobody stopped. Nobody stopped me. Alhamdulillah, jazakumullah khairan. Brothers, let me just say, and sisters, let me just say that, I'm not beating a dead horse. Trust me. I'm not beating a dead horse. But our conversations are different now. And they should be different. We should want different from what we've had in the past. We have so much potential in our communities. So many resources that are unused in our communities. We have people in our communities that are suffering from mental health issues. We have people in our communities that are suffering from psychological issues. We have people in our communities that have been hurt and broken. Marriages, divorces, children who have been separated from their biologicals. Many of Muslim children in our African American Muslim communities are stepchildren being raised by step parents. There's so much molestation and rape that goes on in a lot of these communities and a lot of the homes. If the four walls of a lot of these homes could talk. And we have to fix that situation, man. That can no longer remain the same. We have to fix that situation. That is not going to come from some outside source coming in to help us repair that. That starts with us saying, you know what, enough is enough. Being educated. Imam is teaching classes. You know, brothers and sisters are learning information from other places. We tend to use classes just like we sell oils and books and stuff like that. Instead of, you know, creating a curriculum from the books, from the text, creating a curriculum and then breaking the information down in smaller portions so that people can understand it on a more elementary level. Instead of opening a book, Kitab al-Tawheed, Sharh, explanation by Sheikh Salih Fawzan, he wrote that, he gave that explanation to students of knowledge. Not to common people, not to lay people, not to 9-to-5 Muslims. That means the student of knowledge who's going to sit and teach Kitab al-Tawheed, the explanation of this sheikh or that sheikh, that means that you have to read it and understand it first. And then you have to break it down into smaller pieces, chunks, and be able to feed it to the community on a more elementary level where they can understand it and make connections to the world that they live in. That is not something that someone who, you know, barely understands, barely understands Islam is going to be able to do that. We need curriculums that is, taught in a different masajid. We need to begin to start establishing schools. We need education, academic institutions. We need libraries, Islamic libraries. All these students of knowledge coming back and got all of these books in their houses. We need Islamic libraries. Sheikh al-Albani, rahimahullah ta'ala, donated his entire library to the Islamic University of Medina. You can walk into the library on campus and see a whole section that belonged to Sheikh al-Albani. Donated it to the students in the university. We need libraries where brothers and sisters who know Arabic can go to the library and sit down and do research. We need think tanks. We need people who are intellectuals to put their heads together and start figuring out administratively, how do we fix it? Because our problem is administrative. There's no structure. There's no vision. And that is what needs to change. And inshallah ta'ala, we need to start working towards that. What's the vision of our community? Where do we see ourselves as a community 3 years from now? Short term. 8 years, 10 years from now, long term. What does the African American Islamic community looks like? What is it going to look like 5 years from now? This is planning, economic planning. How do we get money to come back into the communities? Many of these bookstores that we spend so much money on these books, Salafi publications, publications, right? We spend so much money. None of that money comes back into our communities. None of it. Not a dime of it comes back into our communities. And that the vendors that, are vending in front of the masajid, then some of that money needs to come back into the masjid. We get our money and we spend our money in our communities, and it rotates hand to hand to hand in our community. At least 10, 15 hands it reaches before it leaves the community. We get paid and our money immediately goes outside of the community. Immediately. We bring nothing back into the community. And as we said earlier, after Jumu'ah, we spend $250 on a pair of sneakers. We're going to buy J's. We're going to buy Air Force Ones. We're spending all of this money outside of the community, and we spend nothing inside of the community. Brother can have $250 sneakers on his feet, sit in Jumu'ah, mashallah, good khutbah, and then get up and walk out and not leave a dime in the sadaqah box. And go put on a $250 pair of sneakers. Unacceptable, man. Unacceptable. How in the world are we going to build anything like that? When you got more money on your feet than we collected for Jumu'ah. Go figure. You have more money on your feet than many masajid collected for Jumu'ah. And I challenge you guys. You got all these, idiotic challenges on social media. Let's do a build a masjid challenge. How about let's do challenges that are of substance? We're doing all these frivolous challenges, the ice bucket challenge, this challenge and that challenge, just going along with the, with the status quo. Let's do challenges that have substance to it. Let's do a build a masjid challenge. Let's do a $20 every Jumu'ah challenge. Imam, how many people do you have here for Jumu'ah? 250 people. Let's say 300 for Jumu'ah. 300 times 20 is what? Start talking numbers. Stuff get real quiet. Huh? 6,000. That means that we could collect $6,000 every Jumu'ah. That's possible. 300 people here. Everybody, all you have to do is give $20. Everybody got $20. And even if the person next to you don't have 20, got 10, I'll match your 10. I'll give 30, my 20, and match your 10 with another 10, and we'll give 40. $20. And I guarantee you, come next Jumu'ah, the Sadaqah box will be the same way it was today. Guarantee you. Prove me wrong. This is a build a masjid challenge. I'm sure the masjid has financial responsibilities. The electricity, everything, the lights, the water, all of this. You go in some masajid, there's no hot water. You turn on the water to make wudu, the water is ice cold in the wintertime. Because they can't afford the hot water heater to heat up the water so that people, when they come in the masjid, can make wudu. Many masajid you go in, there's one bathroom. 300 people in the masjid, and there's only one bathroom. You're sitting there for 20 minutes waiting for a guy to come out, trying to figure out he's doing Allah knows what in the bathroom. What in the world are you? You've been in the bathroom for 25 minutes. What in the world are you doing in there? You're making a ghusl in the sink. Trying to figure out, like, what's Allah mean? I'm at the door, you just waiting, like, what in the world is he doing in there? But, you know what I'm saying? Like, that condition, we have to get tired of that and say, you know what? That has to change. But a masjid of this size, it's not a small masjid, it's not a small community. 300 people, if everybody gave $20 every Jumu'ah. Let's say you take $100 out of your next check and you say, I'm going to split this $100 up into 5 weeks. That means I have $20 to give for a 5-week period. For next 5 Jumu'ahs, I'm going to take this 100. Next 5 Jumu'ahs, I'm going to give a total of $100, but I'm going to give it in a bulk of 20. 20, 20, 20. 5 Jumu'ahs. And that's your $100 a month. And that's something that you are committed to. You get paid at least twice a week, every 2 weeks. That means you got 2 paychecks. You can't take $50 out of one check, $50 out of another check and still be okay. You hurting if you take $100 out of your check a month for the masjid? Come on, man. We can't be hurting that bad. We spend that on Dunkin' Donuts and, frivolous stuff. Getting your car washed. Tomorrow's Saturday. Some of y'all going to get your car washed tomorrow morning. Yeah, I already know. And you're going to spend between $15 to $18 to get your car washed. Because you're going to get the Armor All, you're going to get the whole works. But that same money, you could have washed your own car. And you could have gave the money sadaqah to the masjid. That's sacrifice. That's sacrifice because you want to see change. So I'm challenging, man. I'm challenging, the communities, man. And that's not just here, but all of the communities. Even my community in South Jersey. We're going to give $20 every Jumu'ah. Take $100 out. I don't have to give the whole 100 at one time. Every Jumu'ah, I'm going to give my 20. Can I get a commitment from you guys here? Is there anyone here that can give $20 every Jumu'ah? Allahu Akbar. It can happen. It can happen. That means that the masjid should be every Jumu'ah collecting $6,000. And on top of that, because there's another part to that, and that is that the masajid that is collecting the money should be transparent with what is being collected and what it's being used for. Because I personally, I'm not giving a masjid a dime of my money if I don't see that the money is actually being used. Now, miss me with all that sadaqah. I'm not putting a dime in your box. I'm not putting a dime in your sadaqah box. Because you collect all this money, you never tell the community how much you collected, and you never tell the community what the money is being used for. Transparency builds trust. And you can see, when you look around, you can see where the money is being used. and not that the money is going in somebody's pocket personally. So, when we talk about the finances in the community, we got to lay it all on the table. So it's not just the burden of the people giving the money, but it's also the administrative, the board, to be transparent about the money, what was collected, and what it's being used for. This is something that we need to work on, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us clarity about, the direction of our community, allows us to cultivate and nurture those from amongst us who are intellectuals, those who have the skills to bring to the table to help move our community in a different direction, where we actually can see some progress. Because as of right now, where I'm standing, I don't really see a lot of progress. I don't know, I can be wrong. Somebody could step up today and say, well, I don't agree with you. This community over here is doing well. This community over here. And if that's the case, then you need to network with other communities that's not doing so well. Don't stand up and isolate yourself and say, well, we're doing good over here. Okay, well, so what? What about the other communities that's not doing so well? You need to network with other communities. Zakat, when the brothers and sisters have to pay zakat every year. It's a duty upon the believers. This is one of the pillars of Islam. Many of us don't even know what the nisab of zakat is. What is the bare minimum that you have to have put to the side in order for you to qualify to pay zakat? Many of us don't even know. Because paying zakat is the furthest thing from our mind and is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. And zakat was instituted so that we could help with the socioeconomic piece of the community. But you never hear a lecture about that. You don't hear a lecture about, when was the last time you heard a lecture on zakat? When was the last time you heard a khutbah on zakat? When was the last time you went to a 3-day workshop or 3-day conference about zakat? But you hear tawheed, the same, the same narrative regurgitated over and over and over. And that's not to say anything is wrong with tawheed. But if you're teaching tawheed and you're not improving the condition of the communities through tawheed, then there's something wrong with your blueprint. There's nothing wrong with the people. The people are capable. Blueprint. The way you're teaching tawheed is not effective. So then that means that we need to revamp. If you're running a business and you go back and you do your audit and you see that the business spent more than it made, then there's a problem there. Okay, we'll stop here inshallah ta'ala. I can go on and on and on. We're done. بإذن الله. وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.